Hey folks, welcome to English 102. I'm your host. I'm your instructor, Dr. C or Johnny. Call me whichever. So I love teaching 102. This is one of my favorite classes to teach. Um, and folks, if you ever have any issue or a problem, just email me. I am here 24/7. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want everyone to get whatever they want out of this class. I want everyone to pass. So if you ever are struggling or challenged, just email me. We will get you help, right? I'll work with you on a paper. I'll work with you on anything. So that's my number one concern is just, if your number one goal is to pass, we will get you there. Okay, so let's start. And if you click on the homepage for our course, you'll see that it looks like this. And we start with a Getting Started module. We have some professional development links. And then I like to do a weekly view of Canvas, right? I just group things by week, right? Week 1, week 2, week 3. Students have told me over the years that that's easier to read rather than abstract modules. So we'll go week 1, week 2, week 3. There's different skills or different outcomes per week. Okay, so as you can see, this is week 1. I haven't published week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5 yet. I like to go week by week and see, what work we finish, where we're at, what our questions are, right? And then I'll sort of shape the next week over the weekend. And then I'll publish that, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So that's sort of how I like to move through the course. You can see, though, sort of how we're moving in terms of skills and thematics, right? We're starting with sources. I'll explain that in just a sec. And we spent 2 weeks on sources. I just think sources are so important. It's like, what sources are we putting inside of our body, right? It's sort of like junk food. Are you eating too much Joe Rogan? Are you reading the Washington Post, the Christian Science Monitor, the LA Times? That's good food, right? If you're just watching YouTube right, that can be junk food. So we'll talk about that. We'll have a discussion about, what kind of sources are trustworthy or reliable, credible, good for us. So that's why we're spending 2 weeks on sources. Also, folks, you guys live in the most complex, problematic media environment ever created, right? You've got deepfakes, banned books, ChatGPT. So I don't know if your high schools are preparing us for this reality. So I take 2 weeks on sources because also the sources that you use in your paper, that's your credibility, right? That's your authority. If you have bad sources, you have a credibility gap. You don't have credibility, right? Sorry to say, right? If you're using random websites, random Google searches, or Joe Rogan, who's pulling on COVID deniers, right? He gives a platform to some extremists, right? He'll just hand the microphone to random people. So if those are your sources, right, that can lower your credibility. That can lower your reputation. So that's why I like to start with sources. I think it's the most important place to start. Once we figure out and square your sources and get good sources, right, then your audience will trust you. And right, so it all starts with, what are your sources? Who are you using, right? Who published that information, right? Is it fact-checked? Or is it mixed sources, right? Is it mixed? So we'll look at all that in the next 2 weeks. Okay, so, and then week 3, we start getting into our first paper, right? And our first paper topic is going to be on hip-hop therapy. My students have chosen this over the years from a list of topics that they generated. My students love writing about this topic. So we'll write about hip-hop therapy and we'll make arguments about that. And so we work on that for week 3, week 4, week 5. We get into different types of claim week 6, and we'll move into another essay with that. You guys will choose the topic. I'll send out a list of possible topic ideas. So we're working on essay 2, week 6, week 7, week 8. Then we get into our final project, which is a podcast. And a podcast is just like the work of an essay. We're doing outlines, we're brainstorming, we're using sources, okay? So think of it as, it is very essay equivalent, in terms of the writing that we need to produce to create this, right? The sources we need to read to make a podcast. And before you freak out, like, oh my God, I've never done a podcast. I taught myself how to make a podcast in about a couple hours. Okay. So I will go through the tech. The tech is really easy. There's even tech that leads you through how to use the tech, right? Like, it's called Podcast Bean. It just walks you through. So there's all sorts of hacks, but it is really easy. We'll use GarageBand or Audacity. Audacity is a free program. You can use on any computer, or you can do speech notes on your phone. So trust me, the tech is so simple. I will walk us through a short video on how to use like 6 or 7 buttons on Audacity. Right, that's all we're doing. I love the podcast. My students love the podcast. This is most, like 45% of Americans have said they listened to a podcast in the last year. So this is just a very popular format for people to receive information, right? You can persuade, you can inform, you can argue. So I want to sort of work in a genre or a format or a style that, people actually listen to, right? Americans actually spend a lot of time with podcasts receiving information versus maybe like a traditional academic essay, which doesn't have a large audience for. Does that make sense? So I want to work with more popular formats, and you can definitely convey a lot of information, persuasion, argumentation in a podcast. So we'll be doing more sort of a research-informed podcast. We're not doing entertainment-based podcasts. We're doing more of a research steeped or informed podcast. Okay, and that's how we'll end on that final podcast, and it will be about 7 minutes minimum, right? So we're not making an hour-long podcast, so don't be afraid. It's going to be a real short one. So that is the course outline, calendar in a nutshell. So let me just break down some of these items for this week, and I already feel like I'm going to be going into video 2. Canvas videos can only record like 14 minutes at a time, so I'll just split this up. So let's get started with looking at the Getting Started Syllabus and Alternative Grading module. Please read this because one of your discussion questions this week asks you, what do you think about alternative grading? Have you heard of that phrase? Have you used that in high school or in other colleges, right? Or other institutions that you may have been at? So I'll go over that really briefly, and I really want to get your input. I'm not going to force another system on us, right? Traditional grading has been forced on us our whole lives, right? That's what I had in high school and college at the UW. And we all know traditional grading, A, B, C, D, F. You get one chance to do something. You get one chance to turn something in, right? You can take a quiz once. If you get a C, that's it, right? Alternative grading is like, no, not so fast. Right? Let's learn at your pace, not the instructor's pace, right? So if you need additional time to learn a concept, you have it. If you need to rewrite a paper or resubmit a paper, you can do that, right? You have multiple chances, as many chances as you want to learn a concept. You don't just get one chance, one shot. That's the beauty of alternative grading. It's more of on your time, right? Rather than, I think right? We do sources for 2 weeks, right? Let's say you're still struggling to find credible, reliable sources after 2 weeks. You have additional time. I'm not going to be like, you didn't get it after week 2, you're done, right? It's a C. You can revise that assignment, right? Find those credible sources, get that up to an A. So that's sort of the perspective on alternative grading. It's more student-centered, it's more student-friendly, it's more fair, and it's also, honestly, it's more rigorous. Because if you think about it this way, if you get a C on something in a traditional class, you can't go back, you can't revisit it, you can't work it out. It's over, right? Alternative grading is like, no, take the time, go back into it. Really figure out the skill, right? And get it. And you have as many chances as you need. So it's rigorous and more academic in that you have more time to learn the skill and to nail it, to get it done, rather than this one shot, right? So I like alternative grading. So go through these, right? Look at the syllabus, look at why this is a late penalty-free course, right? I want you to understand this, right? This is going to inform you and make you a better college student, right? And then read this stuff on alternative grading. What is that? What does that mean? What are the different philosophies or reasons or rationales for why there's a lot of research supporting this, okay? So I'll just show you a little bit. This is from, right, our reading, alternative grading description for this class and more perspectives on ungrading, right? It's called ungrading, it's called alternative grading, it's called a lot of things. So I'll just walk us through some of this. If we were in class, I'd have us read out loud some of these things. So researchers find that grades play to extrinsic, right? That's external, outside of us, not internal or from the heart motivation, right? Research on grades shows that it decreases enjoyment of learning. It increases fear of failure and anxiety, right? And that's all research driven. This is Flaherty 2020. More than that, grades aren't necessarily a good measure of student learning, and based on research, right, there's also rampant grade inflation. So, pause and think about that, right? Have you ever done something because you just wanted the grade versus you wanted to learn, right? So a lot of these researchers are saying grades get in the way, right? And grades often lead us to take the easiest route to the A, right? Or the B, right? Ooh, I've done this thing 20 times. I know how to do it. I'm really good at it. I'm going to do the same thing, even though it's not challenging me, even though I'm not learning, right? I'm going to do that because it's a known A, rather than, ooh, I'm really going to try something new, right? I may fail, but I'm going to try something new. And alternative grading celebrates that, right? Even if I fail, if I learn something, it's an A. That's alternative grading in a nutshell. It recognizes that you have to fail, you have to make mistakes to learn. You can't just do the easy route. You can't do, oh, I know this is going to work, so I'm going to do it to get the A. You have to be challenged. You have to go through that frustration and fail, right, to learn. That is what learning is, right? And so often grades get in the way of that, according to Flaherty 2020, and a lot of other researchers, and based on my own experience. Here's Raja 2021 saying researchers have stressed that grades dampen creativity, they dampen courage, right? They kill enthusiasm, and grades can foster competitive environments instead of collaborative ones, right? Think of grading on a curve, right? That sort of bell curve, right? Only so many students can get an A. Only so many students can, right? That just fosters competition. I don't understand bell curve grading. I think it's so harmful and toxic. So alternative grading is saying, okay, let's take grades out of the way, right? Let's just focus on learning. Right, so once we start removing grades, then you can start taking risks, right? You can do more creative things, right? All of these, this is Rosenblatt 2019. And I'm going to come back for this, for part 2. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'll see you in video part 2.